Thank you very much, and welcome to my worthy panelists indeed, and to the audience who has come in to listen to a slightly difficult topic. It's not a very comfortable topic, especially the space we find ourselves in the context of what has happened in our country very recently, the massive floods and devastation. And across the world, there are scientists and there are other analysts who have been giving this doom and gloom scenario that we have crossed many, many tipping points as far as climate change is concerned, and it's almost like a doomsday scenario that is presented before us. So while I would like to first introduce my panelists to you slightly more than just their names, I would also like you people to pose your questions, keeping the theme of this panel, that is it too late to do anything as far as climate action is concerned? So my panelists are, and I will introduce you first, Sal Gordon, as the person who's running this green school in Bali, which is something very fascinating as far as I'm concerned. I'd love to learn more about that. And what exactly is a green school is something that we would like you to talk about and explain, because we're sitting in an educational institution and green is something that we all aspire to. But do we know what it is and how to get there? So we'd love to listen to you more about that. Babar Bhatti is a waste management and a recycling specialist. His company is the only one in the organized sector in Pakistan that is doing that. Am I right? Yeah. There are other industries that or rather startups who are doing it, but he has been there for quite a while. And being in an educational institution, again, I think it's a learning experience, and we should know that how can we make it more organized and clean up the waste that we generate. We have Hina Hafizullah Ishaq. She's a lawyer, and she's currently co-chair of the Judicial Water and Environment Commission of Punjab, which was constituted by the Lahore High Court. And when I asked her what is the mandate, and she said everything to do about water and environment, which is a very large mandate, and we would love to hear how you are supposed to look at all the different aspects of it. Pasha, I have known for a while, and each time we try to describe or introduce him and describe what he does, he said, I'm a Mali. That's the simplest thing to describe him. So this Mali, actually, he's not just a gardener or a landscaper or a horticulturist. He's also a teacher. He's also an activist. So he's many things rolled into one, and we shall try to unpack what he does as we speak to him. Last but not the least, Charles Barker, who, if I remember, a Syrian friend of mine who'd been here in Pakistan for about 10 years, and he said, I'm a double Pakistani. Because he said in 5 years, I think you can get the Pakistani nationality. And he said, I am a double Pakistani, and I also eat pan. So that's what he used to say. So Charles has been here in Pakistan off and on for the past 26 years, to be precise. I think you and Pasha exchange notes on that. And he is into sustainable tourism. So we always, we live in a beautiful country. We'd like to show it to the world. But what are we doing while showcasing that kind of beauty is something that is very, very damaging. And he will tell us how it can be done sustainably. And his other interest is also something very interesting, because he is into ocean sustainability through the preservation of sharks. And we will learn why sharks are so important in the ecosystem, even if we think they are very scary. So I would like to actually start with our online friend, and thank you very much for taking out time, because I know that you're an extremely busy person. So please, could you, I'll throw this question to all the panelists actually, that when we say that environment and sustainability and climate action, is it too little, too late? So what is your opinion, Sal? Do you really think that it's too late now to do anything about it?
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so climate science, it's still a pretty young science. People are still trying to figure out, the deadlines, whether, what is too late, whether we're past that stage, whether we're fast approaching it, or whether it's still way out in the future. I think the scary part is that a lot of the predictions that have been made so far have been somewhat accurate, which does, to a certain extent, paint some sort of a doomsday scenario, given the fact that we're not changing as quickly as we need to as a people that are inhabiting the earth. Issues, we can see in not just one place or the other. Let's say, you look at the floods that we just faced. That's one of the things. Even food security, it's really part of the same issue, climate change. You look at what happened to all our crops this year, whether it was the mangoes, whether it was, lots of these seasonal crops that were supposed to be, we've always heard that mangoes are a summer crop, so they need that, high amount of heat. So one would presume that, mangoes it would be a great season for mangoes this year, given the fact that it was a pretty hot summer. But just the fact that the summer came too early and it came in the wrong months meant that our mango harvest was completely devastated. I would still say that, it's a bit too early to say whether we're past that stage and it is too late. And I think that never really helped anyone anyways, just thinking that, oh, it's too late. There's nothing really we can do about it. So why bother, right? So from that point of view, I would definitely say that, there is definitely a lot of stuff that we still don't know about climate science. I mean, is it reversible for one, right? I mean, maybe we're way past that point where we need to be now, but do you think it's reversible? Maybe in like another 10 years, can we make it so that, where it's less hotter? Carbon sequestering is one of those technologies that are being looked at. I think technology is going to play a huge role when it comes to, the future of our planet. As with all the other problems that we've faced in the past, whether it was agriculture, whether it was, whatever revolutions that we've had, I think now what we need is a climate revolution. Technology needs to come along, and it needs to ensure that, we can kind of put this in reverse gear. If that happens, I think there's still a lot that can be done.
Ina, so is it too late? Too little?
Thank you, Afia. The UN General Assembly passed a resolution this year making clean and sustainable and healthy environment a human right. That is definitely, too late, but it's never too late, we've been told. What will happen, only Allah knows. What we can do is take responsibility individually and collectively. We need to stop passing the buck. We need to start doing things ourselves. It's okay to expect the government and other nations, the polluters, to do something, but if you look inside, within you, within your homes, within your cities, within your own country, I'm afraid that we are making the necessary contributions. So that is definitely too little that we are doing. But whether it will be too late, if we can make amends now, if we can start taking responsibility, maybe there will be a better future for our children, because this is definitely ground zero now. Climate change is not a threat looming in the distance. It is here and it is now, and we are in it. I don't know whether we will be able to reverse it, but it's better than to, I suppose, just roll over and wait to die, that we need to do something now. And maybe we will die in 5 years, 10 years, but perhaps we will die with more water. Instead of running out of water in a couple of years, maybe we will add a couple of years to that. Maybe we can tackle the air pollution if we change our habits, if we make an active effort.
Thank you. And Pasha, you have been making active efforts across the board. You've been teaching children, you've been teaching adults, you've been picketing at protest rallies. So is that also too little, too late?
Well, Afia, let me put it all into perspective from my point of view. It's a process. What we are going through right now is a process which was started a long time ago. If you're going in a car and you're driving very fast, you put your brakes on, you can slow and then come to a stop. This is not something you can put your foot on the brake pedal and stop it from happening any further. It's going to carry on. So if we, at this stage, change the way we have been over the last 100 years, we are going to be able to slow down and make things stop, but a lot is going to happen between now and when it stops. I don't think there's a question of reversal. You're not going to be able to reverse. This is not something very small job you're doing at home. This is huge. This is global, right? If we can, what we need to do now is we need to be able to anticipate exactly what all is going to happen, and we need to start getting ready to be able to live under those changed circumstances. So people keep saying that in a few years, our glaciers are going to be gone. I can't even imagine how life in our country could carry on if the glaciers are no longer there. Because we depend on the glaciers to grow our food. Sure, we might get flooded out, but the world is not going to get flooded out. Within Pakistan, all of Pakistan is not going to get flooded out. Lots of places in Pakistan are going to get droughted out. There will be no more water for those people, right? So, and around the globe is going to be happening. A lot of places that used to get a lot of rain are going to stop getting rain. Karachi might turn tropical. Balochistan might become green. So it does present us with opportunities, but there is disaster. Not in the future, it's happening now. There is a video which we made, you're aware of it, for the Hisar Foundation, that was done in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. And in that, Sarva Mushtaq says, it's not looming in the future, it's happening now. That was 15 years ago. And all the things that we were predicting, extreme weather events, they're happening, globally they're happening. So there is no questions about it. It's not a question of frightening people and predicting doom, but that is what it is. And it's not predicting doom in the future, it's actually telling you how it is right now. So now we need to get ready to be able to exist in the next 50 years. That's what I think.
You know, there are these youngsters sitting over here, and 50 years seems a very, very long time for them. And yeah, it isn't. So the acceleration of those events which were predicted make it seem that, you know, everything, whatever we are doing is too little. And when we were having this conversation before we sat here in this panel, I think you had some other ideas. You had another answer to this. So Charles, we'd like to hear your opinion, and also please let us know why, what framed that opinion.
Okay. Too little, too late. Absolutely, in terms of climate change. The polar ice caps are melting. The glaciers are melting all over the world. And as they melt and diminish, the ability to reflect the sun's rays diminishes. And so it's getting hotter. And those areas around the world are just getting hotter, and it's irreversible because it's self-perpetuating. And so the climate is going to get hotter, no question, and there's nothing we can do about that. But as you were saying, Pasha, the adaptability has to be the new norm. And we have to be able to adapt, and this is something we can do. We can adapt and modify our environment and work on how we can improve our expectations for the planet. One of the things that I think you were perhaps referring to, though, was the oceans. And we tend to be looking all the time at how we can change things on land, how we can improve our waste management, how we can improve things there. But the main problem and the cause of all of our grief comes from the oceans. Now, phytoplankton which is a plant-based microscopic creature living in the oceans, but phytoplankton produce 70% of the oxygen that we breathe and is important for life, imperative for life. But phytoplankton have been diminishing by about 40% over the last few decades. And the crisis that we're facing is it's not overheating, it's not flooding, it's going to be running out of oxygen. And the phytoplankton are diminishing because of pollution, primarily, and also warming oceans. Now, pollution, what can we do to stop or reduce pollution and reduce the impact on the phytoplankton? And that is, again, there is something we can do about that. If we stop throwing all our chemicals and our trash and our rubbish into rivers, then the rivers don't take it all down to the sea, and the sea then doesn't kill off all these organisms. So waste management is probably the most critical and important issue facing us now. It is now, and our children and our children's children, who in 50 years are going to curse us for not having taken the action now. Because, you know, the human race will not survive if we don't take action. It's as critical as that. And we talk about mitigating things and adapting, but unless we take seriously, massively bold steps, we're finished. Cheerful?
Yeah, very cheerful. But I'm looking at somebody who is actually injecting hope, and welcome back, Sal, because he's working with children. He's working with the generation that is going to inherit the earth that we've messed up. So how difficult is it, and do they also have this kind of a sense of urgency? Or is it that you have this sense of urgency that it's too little too late as far as climate action is concerned, so you are concentrating all your efforts and all your energies in developing these green schools and educating the people who actually will benefit if the earth is green? So yes, it wasn't very cheerful. But what is important is that we realize that not doing something is also not an action. So we may say that, it's too little, too late. So what do? That fatalism is also not going to get us anywhere.
Can I just add something?
I'll come back, in this.
Just very briefly to say, I'm actually an eternal optimist. And I do believe we can make a difference. Because the things that need to be done are manageable, they are achievable. It may take some pretty bold action on behalf of our leaders, and it may take a total change of our way of life that we've come to expect, but it is doable, it is manageable. And so I do actually feel quite positive that changes can be made, but we've got to make them now.
So it's very interesting, that despite that the earlier statement that you made, you are still an optimist. And we are sitting here today just hours away from the World Leaders Summit at the COP27, which is taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh. And there are many people who have been criticizing that this is the 27th year of failure. I have got friends who say that. And considering that it was established, this forum was established with certain targets and certain promises were made and they have never been fulfilled. And yet we keep going to these forums, means that that's the only way forward. So how do you feel, the optimism? Pasha, do you have that optimism? And you think we can go forward?
Obviously, I mean, if I wasn't optimistic, I wouldn't be sitting here and talking, and I wouldn't have been doing all that I'm doing. Okay? So there are at different levels. So there is at individual levels, and then there are community levels, and then state level. So we've all got to pull our weight. And all the work I do with the children, all the tree planting and all the greening that I'm doing all over the city and the country, that's all working towards making a difference. But what you got to do is, if there's heat falling from the sky, you can hold an umbrella. But you also got to put out that fire which is burning by your feet. So there has to be a paradigm change, a shift completely. So we've got to stop polluting our seas and our rivers and our lakes and our streams. But if there are no more glaciers, then what's going to happen? But we've got to we've got to completely reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, completely, which has huge challenges. So, we got so complacent and we didn't really care. So there wasn't any more research. Every time, change comes through research by bringing in something new. So alternate fuels, alternate source of energy, even solar energy and wind power is brilliant as long as you use solar energy through the day. As soon as you start using solar energy through the night, you're using batteries, and batteries are a problem. We still haven't figured out a way of making storage for energy, which is that storage is not destroying the earth. So there has to be a lot of research done on those ends. And at individual levels, and I think apart from individual levels of managing your waste at home, and we have a voice. We need to collectively pressurize our governments, our state, into taking action. So, and it's each one of us, each one of the countries is going to be facing different situations. Now, going back to that 15 years ago, we used to talk about 22 million people are going to be displaced due to the climate in Southeast Asia, and we saw 33 million get displaced in Pakistan alone. What does that mean, So, of course there is optimism, otherwise you can't roll over and die. And like we were talking earlier on, the planet isn't going anywhere, we are. And there have been mass extinctions before. Almost all life died out because a meteoroid fell on the earth. So what can you do about that one? We couldn't have done anything, but this was evolutionary process. There have been ice ages before, but during those ice ages, there weren't 9 billion people on Earth. Now we are like ants crawling on, so something has to be done.
Yes, so it's interesting. I think both Hina also used that term, and so did you, that we can't just roll over and die. So this concept of too little, too late doesn't really work to our advantage, because we still have to keep taking some action. I will just come back to you after I ask him a question, because you are doing something very specific, and it's very important that people over here sitting in Lahore, because you are from Punjab, and you're doing something specific for this province, so we can ask you on that. But Baba, now these are the broader issues, and you are trying to bring in a solution for one of the major issues that have been pointed out, which is waste generation and how to manage that kind of waste. So do you see this, this realization that it's not too late to at least understand how important it is that we reduce, because this is a lifestyle thing, and are people willing to change their lifestyle to get the waste, rather reduce waste, because all the waste that we generate is good business for him, but it's bad for the earth. So he's also trying to sort of give us solutions. So how do you see that scaling up?
Okay, I want to take it a little more towards the optimistic side a little bit. To be honest, I think we cannot do anything more wrong that we're doing right now. I think, that is that point where that, something's got to change, right? Charles talked about phytoplankton. Pasha is in the agricultural field. He will tell you how severely depleted our organic matter is within our soils. And that's our sponge that captures all that carbon into the earth. We've got this huge mass, literally like a carbon sink, and we're not at all utilizing that. Trees cut down like there's no tomorrow. These are the ones that take out all the carbon and give out all the oxygen. All this mining of coal and oil and gas, when we've got the technologies, solar, wind, there's technologies that we haven't even heard about, the whole world is using the heat of the core to heat up their houses, while we're still now looking at air conditioners, putting on heaters in the winters and air conditioners in the summer. While we could just easily, just dig 20 feet into the ground and take that temperature and cool or heat our houses without any energy whatsoever. So I think that, whenever you look at something that's going really wrong, you have to first look at, can we do any worse? I really don't think we can do any worse. And technology-wise, I think we have got a lot of technologies. A lot of the things that I'm talking about right now these are common knowledge. The only problem is that we're not sitting on one table making one uniform decision. We've got different countries making their own decisions, facing their own problems. Then we've got different cities within a country. They've got their own issues. Like Punjab has its own issue of smog, and Karachi has its own issue of devastating rains and floods. So I really do think that there is a lot of room for improvement. And I think that is where the optimism lies. We have the technology. We have gone through this long enough, like you said, 27 years. And obviously, within those 27 years, there have been a lot of failures, given the fact that it's been a completely new technology and people knew nothing about it. The first 5-10 years, people were just scratching their heads trying to figure out what is the global warming. Everyone just thought global warming is the whole, every country, if it's 35 degrees last year, it's 37 degrees this year. When that's not the case, now we realized that the overall warming of the planet means different things happening in different places, because when you have floods in one place, like Pasha was saying, you've got droughts in the other, you've got forest fires in one, and you've got glacier melting in another. So, one would always think, how is that possible that, everything's getting warmer, but, like we've got all these different sets of issues. People are saying, oh, thank God, now we can grow plants in Greenland. That's not, yes, you can grow plants in Greenland. Yes, Balochistan might be green and fertile land later on. But we have to look at the overall issues that we are completely changing the equilibrium of our planet. And that will always come with repercussions. There's definitely a lot that can be done to fix it. I think Pakistan, unfortunately, we're way behind the 8 ball. Main reason behind that is also because that's not the top of our priority list. We feel that, we've got bigger issues on our hands. But I feel like, we always look at the symptoms of a problem and take it from there. The actual problem, climate change, is very much far-reaching than what we think it is. Like I was talking before, food security is one of those main issues which is completely linked with climate change. You can't tackle food security without first looking at climate change. So I think I'm pretty optimistic about it. The problem is that climate change is a sum of all of our actions. I could stay at home one day, but that makes no difference because if there's 100 people over here traveling 100 kilometers a day, that's not going to do anything to scale back climate change. It has to be a decision made collectively within a country, and then also on places like COP27. It's unfortunate that we have to look at different kinds of freak events in order to be woken up, but it's happening now. So people are waking up, and I am hoping that that will be that catalyst for change.
Thank you for being optimistic. And when you say that it can't get worse, so I think the three of us in this age bracket, we sort of, had that dry grin. Because there are things, when we were as young as him, we also thought it can't
We're
get
very imaginative.
Yeah, very. So, but what he said, you see, this is how the entire problem is structured. There's a global conversation going on at forums like the COP. There are national conversations that go on. Then there have to be regional conversations. So, Saima, you are part of the commission. You're heading that commission, Judicial Commission, that was formed for first to assess the problems of water in Punjab, and then you had the entire environment, literally the whole caboodle thrown in your lap. And unless and until that kind of an assessment is done, the diagnosis is done, you can't really prescribe any solutions. So how do you see, is it too vast, or could just the focus on water and the interventions suggested by the Commission have fixed most of the environmental problems as well? I'm just speaking in the context of Punjab, because in Sindh we had a water commission which did come up with a lot of solutions. It's just that, all of them, all the recommendations have not been followed up.
Okay, first of all, Afia, we're not an assessment commission per se. We're an implementation commission. Justice Shahid Karim was hearing a writ petition, a public interest and social action writ petition. And during the hearing, he realized that the need was there to form a water commission. This was 4 years ago. So initially, a water commission was formed, and within the purview of the water commission was implementation, basically, of court orders. And initially, it was Lahore and the fast depletion of groundwater in Lahore. That was the main starting point. Later that year, in 2019, the realization came that you cannot work on water alone. The environment had to be added to it. So hence the Judicial Water and Environment Commission was formed. So I'm co-chairing it. Practically, like I said, I think we have everything under the sun under our purview. We cannot just isolate issues because everything is so interconnected. I'll just give you an example what we're doing. I'm not an optimist and I'm not a pessimist either, I'm a realist. Hence, when I say that we have to take responsibility individually and collectively, basic things, little things. Majority of Pakistan are Muslims, and a majority, I suppose, at least pray. And when we pray, we do our wuzu. So how do we do our wuzu? Look at the mosques, look at your homes. We just open the tap and just leave it running. We don't realize that in Quran, water is a nemat. It's, it's a blessing, it's a grace, and you're wasting all that. It's just going down the drain. It's going into sewage, and you don't have that natural resource. So what we started off with, we installed ablution water tanks in Lahore's mosques and in housing societies and various areas. So once they open the taps, currently we are planning on getting sensors if we can find the sponsors. That water is stored in an ablution tank. It's for water storage. And PHA, the Parks and Horticulture Authority, has been mandated with the pickup of that water and to use it for irrigation of the green belts and washing off the roads. So that water is not wasted. Instead of going down the drain, it's used. Then we installed rainwater harvesting and storage tanks. One is in Lawrence Gardens. It's a huge storage tank. And we worked with WWF, and we've installed a rainwater harvesting system in Qazafi Stadium. We've done recharge wells, because since the groundwater was depleting, so there are many points in Lahore and otherwise where recharge wells have been installed. We issue challans. We've penalized water wastage. You can no longer wash your cars and driveways with hose pipes, and you shouldn't. At an individual level, a bucket is good enough. In England, we live there. We used to have a bucket of soapy water and sponge, and we used to wash our cars. So here we are using the hose pipe, washing our driveways, so that is criminal. There's a challan of 5,000 on domestic abuse of water and 10,000 on commercial abuse. Because if you look at the showrooms and all these commercial establishments, they're doing the same thing. Then we got the industry, the sugar industry, and currently the Sundar industrial estate, to install effluent treatment plants, because they were injecting polluted water into the aquifer. So we got them to install them. It's still underway, but some of the industry have already installed effluent treatment plants. If you look at the service stations, there are U-channels now at the car washes. That was our doing as well. So that water is reused, recycled. It's not wasted. We've gotten WASA to install water meters. That should be happening in a couple of months. Golf clubs, they use a tremendous amount of water. So that is on our list. We've started with Royal Palm and Gymkhana, and we're getting them to use surface water, canal water. We're working on that. The Lahore branch canal had 23, if I'm not wrong, water courses which were sealed for 35 years, over 35 years. We got 19 or 17 of them open so that, most of the parts of Lahore would be irrigated from the surface water instead of extraction from the groundwater. So we have minimized tubal water extraction. We have regulated the timings of tubals in Lahore. Due to these measures, the water depletion of Lahore has stopped. It was at 50 meters in 2018. By 2020, it is stable. We are waiting for the current data of the water loggers installed by WWF and PCRWR. And as soon as that is in, we will know what to do. Regarding water, we've been told that the area in Kasur and all that side has high levels of arsenic, so which is criminal, because those people have started showing skin pigmentation, which is a pre-cancerous thing. So we're looking for sponsors. We aim to install water filtration, arsenic filtration plants there. So that is on our agenda. As regards the environment, the smog is our main issue, one of the main issues, because not only it is a natural phenomena, but it is made worse by what we do. We burn our stubble. That creates havoc. Initially, the fine for stubble burning was 50,000, but now it's been raised to 2 lakhs. But it's not as simple, because we have the small farmer who cannot afford the machinery. So you need a holistic approach. We're working with the industry, we are working with the agriculture department and the universities to find a sustainable solution, because fining alone is not going to stop it. You need to help that farmer, you need to make him aware. One policy was that what the rural farmer believes, that burning the stubble would fertilize his lands, it would make it more fertile. So we are getting the university students and the government to work on that. Burning garbage and solid waste, this all contributes to smog, vehicle emissions, industrial emissions. We're working on those. We have gotten the steel re-rolling industry to install scrubbers. So whatever we can do, brick kilns, they were working on the old bull trench technology. Now we are told, in government papers at least, that they're 100% zigzag. But they do not they are zigzag, but they do not function on zigzag, because they keep on going back to the hybrid model. So that is a problem. It's an enforcement issue as well, because life would be better if the government functionaries weren't so apathetic, if there was not endemic corruption. I'm not saying that all offices are bad, but it's an uphill struggle. We're doing generators. If you recall, a few weeks back, there was a match in Lahore, and during the PSL as well, there were these huge generators all over Lahore. And there were fumes, there were emissions. So we're working on those, and we're looking at getting these companies to install catalytic converters or whatever we find is a sustainable solution. There are encroachment operations ongoing 24 hours in Lahore in various areas. You may have seen them to stop traffic congestion. There's a reclamation of green belts, green verges, and green areas. Because we found that there are laws, there are some, of course there are lacunas in the laws, but there are laws, but the authorities responsible for implementing those laws are slack. So instead of, look outside your homes, your boundary walls, some of us have concreted that. That stops the recharge of the water into the ground. So we are reclaiming the green belts, the green areas, and the green verges, and removing concrete from it, so that at least the most concrete we can remove from Lahore and Punjab, in fact, we're working Punjab-wide, would enable that water to go into the aquifer where it's needed. We have, since we are sitting in Beacon House, we're working on traffic congestion and vehicular emissions, and we have, under the Honorable High Court, directed that all schools and colleges, public and private, will have school buses, at least for 50% of its students, so that you cut those vehicles on the roads. So that is our mandate. We have started rooftop gardening and solar panels on these commercial buildings. At least 50% of the roofs have to be covered. We are working with nomads, the informal sector. They pick up the garbage, they pick up the trash, and then they take the recyclables and give it to people like Barber. And I found to my surprise that there are 5 or 6 industries in the Sundar industrial estate who are working on recycling. All these plants are making fiber, they're making all this stuff. We're working on polythene bags, because if you look around Lahore, there's polythene bags. Despite a ban on their use, they're everywhere. We're working on sustainable farming. We're looking at ways, because of the climate change, we're exploring options of the China model of the fish farming and the rice cultivation. So we're exploring that. We've started an internship program, so we disseminate all this to the future generation, to the generation which is going to be here in no time, 50 years, like you said, at our age. If you look back, they're gone, and you don't even remember where they went. And there's a complaint redressal mechanism, because obviously the Judicial Commission alone, we are understaffed. We cannot do all this. So the public needs to play its role. So we have an active presence on social media. You can just look us up and just send us a picture of a violation with the location, and we'll look into it. We'll take action.
So that is very interesting and very, very important, because usual complaint about government departments is that they do not pay attention to the citizens' complaints. So if there is a complaints redressal mechanism, so that's very important. I have very little time left for additional questions. But if I want to wrap up, I know we've only had these 2 rounds, and unfortunately we've lost Sal Gordon, and he's the one we wanted to hear, sitting in an educational institution, of how to engage. The thing is that we, in the educational environment, because every one of us has said that we need to work for the new generation, and we need the newer generation to be more responsible, more responsive, and more clued into the things that will help heal the world. So it may be too little, too late of what we did, but whatever now needs to be done, that it has to be that tiered approach. Globally, there are forums and all. But sitting in an education institution, you spoke about technology, and there are technological fixes that we can speak about and we can look up, which you can apply over here. And there are some specific questions here, that I have. And one of them is, what is the role of education in global warming? How do you address it? So who would like to answer,
So, to be honest, education, I always divide into Taaleem and Tarbiyat, right? So I think Tarbiyat has a bigger role to play when it comes to global warming. I think that we need to be more aware of our surroundings. Like Hina was saying, letting water run, we all know it. We do it all the time, but we never even notice it. Why is that? Obviously because we're not too concerned about it. Personally, just making these little changes. I'll just give you one example of mine. The old school, the knobs for water were the ones, the twist knobs. Now, it's very hard to, when you have soap on your hands, to kind of close that knob back. So you're always trying to quickly put soap on your hands, especially after COVID, when they were wash your hands for 20 seconds. I was having heart attacks washing my hands for 20 seconds. So a small little change I made was I got that, the lift up handle for your tap. It's very easy. Just, you can use your elbow, you can use anything. It's just about being aware of these small things in your life. Be aware if you're having a water bottle, be aware that that water bottle is not just, it didn't start its life in a factory and it didn't come directly to you. First, all the material was taken out from, different carbon sources. Then it was converted into that material that was used to make the plastic. Then it was shipped all across the world to one of these companies who took it, filled it with water, again transported it to a location near you. Then you went over in your vehicle, bought it, and consumed it. Now, when you look at that huge, long value chain, then you realize that, that little 40 rupee bottle of water, water is what, 2 rupees, 3 rupees? The rest is all carbon going into the environment, In a way, your spending habits, your buying habits, we need to be more aware of what those are and how we can change that for the better.
Afia, can I please add to this?
Okay.
Education is not only your degrees and your certificates, it's the understanding here, opening of the horizons. I just want to give a small example. We're working on stubble burning, so you see all the smog. So we were told there was stubble burning in one of the districts, so we asked for a report, and the report came signed by the ADCG. These people come through a very prestigious civil service exam, so you expect there is something here. So the report we received was that signed by the, given by the AC and just sent by the ADCG, that there was no stubble burning, only burning of solid waste and bushes. So that is the level you're dealing with. So unless and until, I keep on saying, it's like, when you're riding a motorbike and helmets are compulsory and you see people wearing helmets on their arms. Yeah. So the helmets are not there to protect your head from injury, it's only to avoid the challan. So same is the concept with all these environmental issues. They don't absorb it, they don't understand it. So education needs to be absorption and realization of what it can do, not the challans, not the fines.
The helmets are also only to save the driver, not his wife and kids sitting behind. So that's also an issue. Maybe that is why we are just 48.9% of the population of Pakistan. A lot less women survive if in an accident. So I'm just on a lighter note. But yes, so that's true. But Pasha and especially Charles, in fact, I'll go to Charles first. You are, I introduced you as somebody who's there into sustainable tourism. I'm building an infrastructure for sustainable tourism, not just doing it yourself as a tourist. How difficult a task is it, given some of the things that Hina has alluded to, the enforcement, the understanding by the officials who need to enforce standards or some, call it the laws. How do we, bypass those issues?
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are masses of laws, there's lots of legislation covering many topics, and in my case, the development of tourism and building regulations. There's lots of legislation in existence to manage it, but there is virtually no enforcement, and the implementation of these regulations just doesn't happen. And I'd like to just sort of change the subject slightly. I think globally, the biggest problem we have is an absence of strong, effective leadership. And strong, effective leadership ripples down throughout, from government to local councils to whatever. But until we've got some strong leaders who are willing to make bold decisions that are not based on how do I stay in power, but what is right for the country, what is right for the community, what is right for the planet, we're not going to get anywhere. And we all have intelligent ideas about what we can do, but it starts at the top, and the strong leadership is what's missing, and that's where we really need to get some action. And
So
that's down to us to vote them in, I suppose.
It does, actually.
Tricky.
So the leadership, of course, that he's talking about is not just the political leadership of the world, but leadership in each sphere. So the trickle down of your hierarchy of governance, as well as within your home you have leaders, within your schools you have leaders, within your communities you have leaders, and they need to be those advocates for a better world. Because one thing, which Pasha had also said, though the planet ain't going anywhere, and we must realize it's you and us who will disappear. The planet will remain, and nature, without humans impacting it, has the capacity to heal. And there are 2 or 3 places, in fact, one place which would probably be there in living memory. If you look up what happened at Chernobyl in Russia, and how the forest over there is absolutely thriving, and how the wildlife has come back simply because of the earlier radiation scare. There was no human footprint that was allowed over there. So that means that nature could heal that earlier man-made disaster. So if we take care right now, that we take care of the world without thinking of the elimination of the humans, that is the ideal situation that we need to be at. So this is, so one other question that I got, because we have been talking about the consumptive habits and of how we, that consumption creates waste. That is it a problem of capitalism? Because capitalism as a system is resource intense. You have to keep producing things, you have to keep using them, you have to keep discarding them just to keep that, the wheel of economy churning. So yes, it's a political question, but then if we don't ask those difficult political questions, we don't really move forward. Power?
Okay, so I'm a firm believer that capitalism is the bane of every problem that we have. Because, I mean, in itself, capitalism is a great system because it allocates, thank you, allocates resources efficiently. But the problem is that, what is efficiently? Profit is not the only driver that it says what we need to do, what we need to do. What are we going to do with, let's say, millions of, let's say, even dollars, if we don't have, land to live on, if we don't have land to grow our food on? I strongly believe that there has to be a mixed system with priorities. We need to definitely go in and look at certain problems that are not being addressed by capitalism, and we need to find a space for it. We need to allocate those resources. And I think that's where governments generally need to come in. I think we have a very wrong definition of what government really is. Government's job is to look at these issues that are not being catered by the economic system that you have around you, and associate some capital to it so we can actually solve these issues.
Oh, sorry, Hina.
Well, when I look at what's happening around us, so all those movies which we saw, the apocalypse movies, they're coming to life. So there are people who are looking for water on the Mars right now without, taking the steps to stop polluting the waters on this planet. And we found that rich people, elite, with industries and with all these resources, they are not bothered enough to put the money back where it belongs, to take the steps necessary. It shouldn't be our duty to ensure that you do not discharge polluted water into the aquifer. It should be common sense that you do not do that to your environment. But that doesn't absolve the lesser, the common man like us, of our responsibilities as well. Because I've seen that we're equally responsible. We're polluting the environment on a daily basis. So I don't know, I think we have to strike a balance. And the sooner we wake up and realize that it is now, where will we run to? We save up all these dollars and pounds. Where will we run to? Look around you. It's happening globally. There is no place where you can run to. I was telling them that I was looking at the temperatures, Google tells me. I got married 35 years ago in October, so I was feeling so hot this October in Lahore that I decided to look it up. There's a 7 to 8 degrees difference now in Lahore's temperature. So, and if I recall, when I lived in London, 27 degrees, when the temperature reached 27 degrees, it was like we were going to die. It was an extinction event. And now London, I believe it touched 40 degrees or something. So where will you run to? So it's time to take stock and stop this madness.
So capitalism is also, obviously, because you're saying it's resource heavy, so the resources it extracts takes it away from other people. So this is what drives that deeper wedge between the haves and the have-nots, as you said, that the elites and the people who are on the other side of that divide. And there is this phenomenon which the climate change and environmentalists have been talking about. It's not a phenomenon, it's an event that is rather a result of this capitalism and of greed, avarice, of climate migration. And when you say where will they run to, many of them are not able to go back to the place where they have had to move out from because the place does not exist anymore. So this is also something, you know, right now, in floods, there are people sitting on the roadsides. But when the waters do recede, many of them will not be able to go back home, even if you give them money to, you know, rebuild their homes, etc., because that place is something, is a place where they should not have been residing. So where do you throw them? You know, you need to settle them. You need to make provision for them to have a decent living wherever else they go. They need to have their social networks, you know, recrafted. So it's a very, very intersectional thing when you speak of climate change and environmental effects. And Pasha, you've been on both sides of the divide. You sit on the table where these things are spoken about, and we try to look for solutions. And you and I have both stood on the road with placards on in our hands, and we've sloganeered against the authorities, with whom we sit, as by the way. So we do what is needed when it is needed. How do you see us crossing that divide? And I'll come to Charles after that.
Actually, it's very difficult for me because 20 years ago, and you'll see a young Tawfiq Pasha with a black beard saying, please don't wash your car with a pipe. Okay? And about so many of the other things which have just been mentioned. I think the last figure that I remember when we made that video 15 years ago, 450 million gallons of water daily through the drain went into the sea. We are still there, 20 years later, and what we are doing is, like you said, hum masjid mein ek tanki bana rahe, we are making a tank in the mosque and we are collecting that water, and a tanker comes and picks it up. Look at the carbon footprint of that, of taking that water from that tank and giving it to the plants. Just, it shocks me because you are not actually creating solutions. You're just transferring the problems. What needs to be done, and I believe you me, after the earthquake, 2005, I was up in Ravla Court and everybody was drinking water from that stream, that spring, and I refused to drink it. And they want to know why, and I told them because all the toilet water of all those people up on the hill is coming out of the stream. Every square inch of our country, every drop of our country's water, every drop, everything is polluted. And, you know, we are just trying to just get along and move along. And in Urdu, I'm sorry, they say, patli gali se nikal jana. Just get out of here from the narrow lane. No, no. Every city's, every drop of waste water needs to be recycled and reused. Not once, but maybe twice and 3 times. 10, 15 years ago, we had a conference in Karachi, a water conference. Our foundation does that every 2 years. And we had people who came from Singapore. They brought these bottles. And the label said, new water. That was 100% sewage water recycled and made drinkable. Things have changed. If we are still going to be fist-faddling around, the children are not going to forgive us. I hold my parents and my parents' parents responsible for the political turmoil we are in, for the kind of a world we are living in today. I already hold them responsible for it. I, in my own capacity, at least I can look myself in the eye and say, I have done my bit. Not only personally, but I have made all my efforts at making a difference to the collective lives. If a group of people is not behaving, somebody has to come in and make them behave. What is this? Punish them. So you put fines on them. But do they actually know? So what I feel is that we have still not made everyone aware of the problem. So once you make them aware, and they can see the impact that each individual is creating, And then you give him the solutions, because you can't just tell him he's a problem. You got to tell him the solution to it. It has to change. I don't believe, my friend here, I've met him today for the first time, but I met his father 20 years ago. And I went to see what they were doing. I don't believe in the reuse, recycle and thing, you know. I believe in the reflect
Reduce.
and refuse. I personally, it's been a very long time since I've used one of these. I don't. I'll go thirsty,
Same here.
but I won't drink out of it. It's not only because of the plastic. It's also because of the plastic I'm consuming with the water. So, you know, we have to educate the people that, and I keep telling people, this is your tool. This is your tool. Everybody has it today. Make the people aware and then also tell them the solutions and make them face the consequences. How do we do it? I know we don't beat our kids today because the times have changed, but we punish them in some way or the other. But it's now come to a stage where you don't even have to punish your kids because they're aware. They know that these are certain things they're not supposed to do and they don't do them.
Pasha, we
Right.
have to wrap up.
So we have to completely change the way we think. Completely.
Thank you. And last but not to say, although we have to close, we are already over time, you can see the timer. But you thrice use the word bold actions, bold decisions. Just sort of, so you will have the last word, not me. What exactly do you mean by the bold words, bold actions?
Love the oceans.
Love the oceans, and please listen to him, engage with him elsewhere, because he will track back from the oceans of why it is important. 75% of the earth is oceans. If we pollute those, we don't really have much to go on after that, right?
They regulate your climate.
Yeah, they do. So thank you very much for being a very good audience and listening to us, despite all the doom and gloom that we injected into our talk. But there is that element of hope that we are sitting in an educational institution with youngsters, and hopefully they will, let the earth be a better place to live on than we did.